Buckingham Palace, once a symbol of timeless routine, has turned eerily quiet. Queen Camilla, once the ever-visible symbol of continuity by Charles's side, has vanished from view. The whispers aren't whispers anymore, they're thunder. Something is terribly wrong. Behind velvet curtains and tightly sealed gates, royal aides scramble, but no statement is given. The world waits, but Princess Catherine doesn't. She acts. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. It began subtly, a missed engagement here, a postponed visit there. At first, palace sources blamed fatigue, then stress. But soon, even those flimsy explanations fell silent. Camilla, once omnipresent beside Charles in charity halls, state dinners, and press walks, seemed to evaporate from public life. One by one, her scheduled appearances were cancelled with vague notes about rest and recuperation, yet no official medical bulletin ever emerged. Clarence House, usually eager to maintain transparency in the face of rumour, remained locked in eerie silence. That silence became its own message, one far more unsettling than any public statement could have conveyed. The atmosphere around the palace shifted almost overnight. Heightened security was noted by photographers, new faces, unfamiliar vehicles, unexpected movements. Staff members, once light-hearted and composed, now rushed between wings in tightly choreographed patterns, avoiding eye contact with the press. Visitors, some of whom were later identified as private physicians and discreet senior aides, entered through side entrances under cover of darkness. Still, the public heard nothing, not a single word. But one woman had already begun to move. Princess Catherine was seen leaving Windsor Castle late one evening, flanked by senior advisors and clutching briefing folders, materials typically reserved for the monarch or consort. She said nothing to the cameras, her expression unreadable. But within hours, insiders confirmed that she had quietly assumed oversight of several pressing engagements initially assigned to Queen Camilla. These weren't casual substitutions, they were strategic placements. The types of duties that required trust, authority, and above all, readiness. No announcement had been made, but to those paying attention, the shift was unmistakable. The Royal Press Office, often the first to tamp down speculation, responded to inquiries with an unprecedented firmness. No comment became their mantra, even as international media demanded clarity. Social media erupted in speculation, but what caught the attention of royal watchers was how deliberately Catherine refused to step back. Instead of waiting for direction, she became it. And in doing so, she signaled something deeper. The center of royal gravity was shifting. Within this vacuum, whispers began to rise, faint at first, but steadily louder. Not just about Camilla's condition, but about succession, symbolism, and what a new face at the helm might mean for a monarchy already stretched thin. Power abhors a vacuum, and with Camilla silent and Charles withdrawn, the weight of royal presence had to be carried. And just as the monarchy began to unravel in silence, a surprising figure rose, not in speech, but in command. There was no announcement, no trumpet fanfare, just presence. As Camilla faded into the shadows, Catherine emerged not as consort, but as commander. One by one, royal duties that belonged to Camilla were quietly absorbed by the Princess of Wales. But this wasn't coincidence. This was calculated, and someone had authorized it. It began with a meeting no one expected her to attend. The Royal Foundation Council, once the joint pride of William and Catherine, had been left largely dormant following Camilla's increased presence in royal engagements. But now, in a moment of striking reappearance, Catherine chaired it alone. Fanfare, no official explanation. But within minutes, decisions were made, directives issued, and staff reassigned. Not just ceremonial, but structural. That single meeting sent a signal louder than any press release. Princess Catherine wasn't merely filling in, she was taking over. What followed was a flurry of rapid shifts. Portfolios once handled by Camilla, those tied to national health awareness, early education, and veteran care, were now listed under Catherine's domain on internal schedules. There were no press briefings, no public statements, yet official records inside the palace began reflecting the change. The pace at which her role expanded startled even those within the firm. Camilla's absence wasn't being temporarily covered, it was being structurally replaced. And the moves were too strategic, too swift, to be the result of improvisation. Someone behind closed doors was clearing the path, and Catherine was walking it without hesitation. Within palace walls, her new reach created a quiet ripple. Aides once dedicated to Camilla were discreetly reassigned. Handlers, press officers, and secretarial staff previously linked to the Queen Consort's calendar were moved without record. Some were folded into new teams under Catherine's operations, while others quietly exited. It wasn't a reshuffle, it was a silent dismantling. Yet no one dared speak publicly about the transformation underway. It was as if the system itself wanted to forget what once was and reorient around what was becoming. And then came the appearance of an unexpected figure. Lady Susan Hussey, one of the late Queen Elizabeth's most trusted confidantes, was seen entering Kensington Palace under private security. For years, she had stood beside Camilla, defending and advising her during the Queen's funeral and Charles's accession. Now, she was sitting with Catherine in private, not as a critic, not as a skeptic, but as an advisor. To those watching from within, it was a historic shift in allegiance, one that didn't happen without thought. Lady Susan's silent endorsement carried more weight in the shadows than a dozen formal declarations. Through all of this, Catherine remained solemn, composed. There was no trace of triumph, no suggestion of power, lust. She moved as one bearing responsibility, not privilege. But beneath the calm, even insiders admitted this was no accident. It was a transition born not just of necessity, but of quiet design. Palace aides, when speaking off record, had already given it a name. The silent transition. A moment where the future arrived, not with a roar, but a whisper. But if Catherine was stepping in, the question loomed larger: what exactly was Camilla stepping away from? Behind the carefully worded royal denials and private family matters lies a truth the monarchy is desperately trying to manage. Queen Camilla's health is not just failing, it's spiraling, and the internal panic has reached the highest corridors of power. Yet the public still believes she's simply resting. It began with murmurs behind closed doors, whispers among senior aides and private physicians that something was off. Not just exhaustion or strain, but something far more insidious. Leaked physician notes, smuggled from an internal health report, spoke of rapid cognitive and physical decline. That phrase, clinical yet devastating, spread like wildfire among the upper tiers of palace staff. These weren't the usual symptoms of fatigue. This was an unraveling. Camilla, once the calculated and sharp voice behind many of Charles's public strategies, was reportedly struggling to track conversations, missing appointments, and repeating decisions. The deterioration was no longer deniable. Her last public appearance was quietly erased from official memory, but those who saw it will never forget. Slurred speech during a ceremonial toast, a visible hesitation in her walk, moments that sent silent shockwaves through royal watchers. What had once been dismissed as minor slips now looked like forewarnings. That single engagement marked the last time Camilla was seen by the public, and then complete withdrawal. In her place, a wall of silence and a tightening ring of protective aides. Charles, facing what may be the most emotionally crippling moment of his reign, made an unpublicized move that stunned insiders. He summoned a former cabinet medical advisor, one who had been close to the late Queen during her final months. Their meeting, held at Balmoral under heavy secrecy, was described as urgent and grief-laced. Charles wasn't just a husband seeking comfort, he was a sovereign reckoning with the possibility that his queen consort could no longer fulfill her role. Not now, not ever again. Inside Buckingham, the Queen's private wing became a fortress. Round-the-clock staff rotations, discarded medical equipment removed under cover of night, doors, guarded by trusted footmen, with no explanation given to regular palace workers. What was once routine inside the palace had turned militarized, silent, watchful, a regime built to protect not just a person but a narrative. The monarchy could not afford another public health crisis. Not so soon after the Queen's passing, not while the kingdom still struggled to find equilibrium, but as Camilla's condition worsened, legal implications began to emerge. Within the Crown's contingency protocols lies a clause rarely referenced granting temporary representational clearance in moments where a senior royal is deemed unfit for public duty. That clause, insiders confirm, was quietly activated, and it was Catherine who received the clearance, not Anne, not Edward. Catherine. The decision, reportedly signed by Charles himself, was never intended to be permanent. It was supposed to stabilize the ship, just until Camilla recovered. But what the royals didn't expect was that Catherine's temporary presence would soon feel like permanence. For years, Queen Camilla orchestrated a quiet but powerful reign commanding influence over patronages, court politics, and even Charles's public tone. Her disappearance didn't just leave a gap in ceremonies, it left a chasm in power. And while the crown scrambled to stabilize, Catherine was already sealing the breach. With Camilla gone from view, the rhythm inside the palace changed. What had once flowed through her decisions, schedules, persuasion now stalled. Charles, long reliant on her counsel in matters both personal and political, appeared suddenly adrift. Briefings piled up, appointments were missed or postponed. Senior aides who had once leaned on Camilla to translate the king's instincts into action were now left directionless. It became apparent that her influence had gone far deeper than ceremonial visibility. It had been structural, and without her, the command center of the monarchy wavered. One of the first signs of destabilization emerged during preparations for the Remembrance Service. No one could agree who would now represent the Queen Consort's ceremonial precedence. The official hierarchy remained unchanged, but in practice, no figurehead stepped forward. Senior courtiers debated protocol, while press inquiries flooded the palace communications team. Yet, amidst the uncertainty, Catherine arrived on time, briefed and wordless. She didn't declare her place. She simply stood where the absence was felt and did the work. By the time the evening's coverage aired, commentators had already labelled her presence reassuring. And the press ran headlines asking whether Britain had just witnessed the emergence of its future queen in spirit, if not in title. Beyond the pomp and rituals, deeper confusion gripped Camilla's former charitable landscape. Patronages tied to women's health, domestic violence recovery, and rural arts, the causes Camilla had embraced, suddenly found themselves adrift. Emails went unanswered. Trustees privately admitted they had no contact at all with Clarence House. In this vacuum, something remarkable happened. Catherine's office began reaching out, quietly, strategically. Liaisons were assigned, invitations extended, funding reviews arranged. These were not show gestures, they were signals of absorption. And the institutions noticed, but not everyone welcomed the shift. Within the Queen's former household, long-serving aides and loyalists began to whisper dissent. Some had built careers around Camilla's rising influence. Others felt blindsided by what they described as a cold handover, lacking ceremony or recognition. There were murmurs of exclusion, of being locked out of decision rooms, of new access badges mysteriously failing. At least one longtime staffer resigned, citing irreconcilable changes. The tension was subtle, but building. Camilla's inner circle may have been out of sight, but they weren't out of power. And now, they were watching closely. Through it all, Catherine remained unshaken. If she felt the pressure of assumption, she didn't show it. If she carried resentment or fear, she buried it. Those closest to her spoke of a woman fully aware of the gravity, but unwilling to seek applause. There were no smiles, no celebratory moments, only the weight of obligation. A role that had come not through ambition, but through necessity. And in that weight, she found her anchor. She was not taking a crown, she was catching it. But the void didn't just breed instability, it sparked resistance. Every palace has ghosts and loyalists. As Catherine rises, not all within the royal household are applauding. Deep within Clarence House and Balmoral files lie names, handlers, ladies in waiting, secretaries once fiercely loyal to Camilla. Now, some are actively resisting the shift, and their influence, though quiet, could become catastrophic. The power vacuum left by Camilla's silence did more than invite Catherine forward. It awakened those who had long operated behind the Queen Consort's influence. Loyalists who had secured roles through Camilla's ascension now found themselves sidelined, and not all were prepared to accept it quietly. Leaked private messages between senior aides painted a chilling picture of resentment. One, reportedly sent to a trusted foreign dignitary liaison, accused Catherine of overreaching her brief and warned that the monarchy was being repackaged under naive hands. The bitterness wasn't subtle, and it wasn't isolated. When Camilla's longtime lady-in-waiting, someone who had remained at her side through the harshest years of public scrutiny, abruptly resigned, the palace offered no explanation. But within hours, murmurs of protest surfaced. She had allegedly disagreed with the restructuring of ceremonial roles, voicing concern that traditions were being erased in real time. Her exit marked a turning point. It was no longer just whispers, it was revolt, dressed in etiquette. The quiet war within the palace had begun. Anonymous op-eds began to appear in newspapers historically sympathetic to Camilla. They made no direct accusations but were laced with cutting undertones. Phrases like royal entitlement and untested ambition were woven into critiques of changing traditions. One column asked pointedly, "Is experience no longer a requirement for royal duty?" These pieces struck chords among the public, planting seeds of doubt. Perhaps Catherine was moving too quickly. Perhaps the crown was being reshaped by unseasoned hands. But insiders recognized the fingerprints. They belonged to those who had lost access, power, and influence. Even Camilla's family, quiet by design, began stirring. Her stepchildren, once peripheral in public life, were reportedly alarmed at the pace of change. One source close to the family claimed they were deeply concerned about what they called the erasure of Camilla's legacy. While no official statements were made, their unease echoed through private networks. The symbolism of their silence grew louder with every engagement Catherine attended in Camilla's place. An internal memo later exposed an unsettling revelation, a failed attempt by two senior household members to block Catherine's attendance at a key diplomatic summit. The pretext was inappropriate optics. But the truth was simpler. They feared her presence would mark a point of no return. Had she attended, it would have sent a global signal that the monarchy had unofficially crowned its next matriarch. The summit went ahead. Catherine was there, and the message was received. Yet these moves, though shrouded in protocol and civility, carry weight. A faction is emerging, a hidden alliance of those who remember Camilla not as a figurehead, but as their cornerstone. They see Catherine's rise not as continuity, but as betrayal. And if left unchecked, their influence could fracture the institution from within. Yet while the old guard plotted in shadows, Catherine received a message that would alter her course completely. It was never supposed to happen this way. King Charles, stoic, ceremonial, the embodiment of endurance, cracked behind closed doors. As Camilla's condition worsened, so did his grasp on royal command. In that chaos, a daughter-in-law became his lifeline. And the monarchy's future began to orbit a different center of gravity. For a sovereign trained to wear composure like armor, Charles's unraveling came not with drama, but with silence. It began with missed appearances. Two major state visits, one to Canada and the other to the Gulf, were abruptly rescheduled, according to palace statements. But behind the scenes, the explanation was far more fragile. A confidential report, never meant for public release, cited emotional strain and incapacitating personal disruption. The reality was clear. Charles wasn't stepping back due to diplomatic strategy. He was collapsing under the weight of personal loss and institutional chaos. With Camilla retreating further into medical silence, the king's circle grew tighter, more guarded. And into that tightening spiral stepped Catherine, not with ambition, but with urgency. She was seen arriving at Highgrove on an unscheduled visit, flanked only by a single aide. No one knew why she had come, but insiders confirmed that the visit lasted over 5 hours. When she emerged, her face was unreadable, but the very next morning, key royal engagements previously attributed to the king began bearing her initials on internal prep memos. The substitution had begun. Anne and Edward, the stabilizing anchors of the older royal guard, reportedly grew deeply concerned about the state of the king. One senior source described Charles as present but untethered. In private meetings, he seemed distracted, distant, emotionally adrift. His responses shortened, his input waned, and slowly the unthinkable began to take shape. Aides once strictly instructed to route all matters through Clarence House began sending briefings directly to Kensington. Catherine, not Charles, was now receiving the flow of information. William, while publicly supportive, began to show signs of exhaustion. He stood beside Catherine at events, offered nods of agreement during joint addresses, but his silence spoke volumes. It was as though he had silently passed a torch, not in title, but in responsibility. And Catherine, steady, solemn, unstoppable, gripped it with both hands. This was no coronation, but a transfer. And it was happening without a word. But perhaps the most piercing moment came in private, far from cameras, far from protocols. During a quiet communion service at Windsor's private chapel, Charles reportedly wept. A solitary moment, witnessed only by a chaplain and one trusted aide. The man who had waited a lifetime for the crown now found himself unraveling beneath it. Not from scandal or rebellion, but from grief. The queen he had leaned on was disappearing, and the woman holding the kingdom upright was not the one he married, but the one he once watched marry his son. But just as the cracks widened, a sealed document from Camilla's chamber was delivered to Catherine's hand. In a stunning twist, it wasn't opposition Catherine faced, it was endorsement. A handwritten letter, left in Camilla's personal safe and marked with the royal seal, surfaced, addressed not to Charles, not to William, but to Catherine. And its contents redefined everything. The discovery came not through ceremony, but through necessity. With Camilla now almost entirely withdrawn, and key documents needing clearance, her private chamber was opened under the watch of royal custodians. Inside, a velvet-lined safe one that had remained untouched since the Queen Consort first assumed her official role, lay a single envelope, hand-sealed with wax, bearing the Queen's private crest. The document was quietly delivered to the palace office, where a trusted aide read it first. What they found was nothing short of seismic. Camilla's own words, written in unmistakable script and dated just days after Queen Elizabeth's funeral, laid out a vision few expected, one where Catherine was not simply next in line to support, but to lead. The letter, confirmed by the palace as entirely authentic, opened with a simple line: "If I falter, let her stand. She is the steadiest of us all." It was not formal, not rehearsed. It was personal. Camilla had written not as a queen consort, but as a woman who had walked the tightrope of public skepticism and private duty. And in that vulnerability, she had seen something in Catherine, something the world was only just beginning to recognize. The letter detailed a private conversation between the two women, one that had taken place during the somber days following the late Queen's passing. Camilla reportedly expressed doubt in her own longevity, physically and emotionally. She admitted that while she had fought for her place at Charles's side, she did not know if she could carry the weight forever. Her message wasn't a confession, it was a contingency. She didn't ask permission. She passed the torch. And by sealing it with her personal crest, the same insignia she had reserved for only her most private correspondences, Camilla gave it authority, not institutional, but emotional. It was the kind of symbolic gesture that could quiet the doubters and realign the royal family's internal divisions. And it came from the very person many believed Catherine was quietly replacing. When Catherine read the letter, she reportedly sat in stunned silence. No cameras, no advisors, just a single candle and the words of a woman who, until now, had stood as her most complex counterpart. And though shaken, Catherine did not hesitate. She handed the document to the archivist and asked for it to be stored in the sovereign's private collection, sealed, but never buried. Then, without pause, she returned to the agenda for the day, meeting with Commonwealth representatives and briefing aides on upcoming charity transitions. The shift was now complete, not by decree, not by crisis, but by choice, Camilla's own. And so the kingdom braced for what had quietly become reality. A new force at its helm. No throne, no sceptre, no fanfare. Yet across the Commonwealth, a quiet understanding swept through the people. While Queen Camilla rested behind guarded walls, it was Catherine who answered the calls, comforted the grieving, opened hospitals, represented Britain. To the public, the transition wasn't announced. It was felt. What began as a series of substitutions quickly transformed into something far more permanent in the eyes of the nation. Without proclamation or title change, Catherine stepped into the void and became the face the public turned to in moments of national emotion. As her presence expanded, so did public sentiment. Polls surged, headlines shifted, and talk shows pivoted from analysing the silence around Camilla to celebrating the emergence of what many were now calling Britain's quiet queen. Approval ratings for Catherine soared to heights unseen since the early years of Princess Diana. But unlike Diana, Catherine's rise came not through charisma alone, but through responsibility, through action. Letters from global leaders began arriving, not addressed to King Charles, and not to the Queen Consort, but directly to Her Royal Highness, the Princess of Wales, bypassing ceremonial intermediaries. The weight of international diplomacy had found a new centre. One Commonwealth leader was reportedly heard saying, "If you want something done, you speak to Catherine." And speak to her they did, quietly, repeatedly, and with full awareness that the woman answering the call was no longer just a figurehead. She was functioning as a sovereign in everything but name. Then came the storm, the literal one. Flood waters devastated northern England, leaving thousands displaced. Traditionally, such visits would be carried out by the reigning monarch or the Queen Consort. But this time, it was Catherine who arrived, with no security press build-up and no entourage. She moved swiftly through crisis centres, speaking with volunteers, embracing mothers who had lost everything, kneeling beside children shivering in church halls. When asked how she had arrived so quietly, one aide simply said, "She didn't want ceremony, she wanted to help." It was during this visit that a moment crystallized the shift for millions watching on television. A little girl, no older than 5, clutched her mother's sleeve and asked aloud, "Is that the Queen?" And the mother, tears in her eyes, nodded without hesitation. "Yes, that's Queen Kate." The phrase spread instantly, a whisper that travelled faster than any press release. In that single moment, the monarchy crossed an invisible threshold, one where the public no longer needed confirmation from the crown to recognise its core. The media, long restrained by royal protocol, could no longer hold back the comparisons. Side by side, tributes of Diana and Catherine flooded front pages, not to diminish either, but to declare a spiritual succession of grace under pressure. In one of her final appearances before the Queen's death, Elizabeth had worn a singular sapphire brooch unmistakable in design and steeped in history. That same brooch now appeared on Catherine's lapel during her hospital visit in Manchester. No explanation was given. None was needed. It was symbolism at its most precise, an unspoken passing of royal continuity. Yet behind all the grace and strength, one question now haunts the palace. What happens if Camilla never returns? No abdication, no death, no coronation. And yet everything changed. The monarchy has entered uncharted waters, guided not by legal decree, but by moral momentum. Camilla's silence has become a ghost over the institution, and Catherine's steadiness has become its heartbeat. Now, the crown floats in limbo, its destiny quietly reshaped. In the absence of clarity, the system begins to correct itself. Behind closed doors, palace officials and senior constitutional advisors have entered delicate and unprecedented discussions. Talks not about succession to the throne, but about succession to influence. A quiet review of royal protocol has begun, focused specifically on emergency transitions, the delegation of ceremonial responsibilities, and the implications of a consort rendered indefinitely absent. The word permanent is still too sharp to utter. But among royal legal minds, the question is already formal. What happens if the Queen Consort cannot return, but never officially leaves? The answer may determine the future of the Crown's public identity. Parallel to these legal undertones, another, more visible shift is taking form. William, once front and centre at high-profile engagements, has begun to step back, not in retreat, but in silent support. His appearances have become increasingly joint, always beside Catherine, and when apart, it is she who now represents the face of the monarchy. It is a deliberate choreography, and one that hasn't gone unnoticed by insiders. The future king is preparing the world not for his reign, but for hers. Not in title, but in trust. Catherine is no longer shadowing the throne, she's anchoring it. Perhaps the most symbolic moment of this transformation came quietly, tucked beneath the surface of a cancelled unveiling. Camilla's official portrait, once scheduled for display at St. James's Palace, a portrait marking her reign alongside Charles, was quietly postponed. No explanation given, no rescheduled date. The canvas remains under wraps, perhaps permanently, and in its place, the halls are being reconfigured not with paint or portraits, but with people. Senior Buckingham Palace staff, once aligned to the Queen Consort's schedule and administrative rhythm, have been reassigned under Catherine's orbit. Meetings are now held in her presence, projects greenlit with her signature. Titles remain unchanged, but the balance of authority has shifted so completely that even long-time palace veterans have begun to refer to Kensington as the new centre of command. And it is within this silent storm of change that a deeper truth has emerged. This is no longer a moment, it is a movement. The monarchy may never return to what it was before. There may never be a formal declaration. No public announcement, no ceremonial passing of power, but what has already happened is irreversible. Catherine has stepped into a role the institution didn't ask for but needed, and the institution, ancient and reluctant, is adjusting to her pace. Whether Camilla returns or not, the crown now bends toward a different horizon, one carved not by birthright, but by presence, poise, and resilience. As the world watches, one truth has never been clearer. Where power once demanded permission, now it bows to presence. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.